Okay. Okay. I'm using my phone, so I may not be able to see participants. So if you want to ask anything, please do raise your hand or shout from the screen. Okay. Parshas Ha'azinu. Thank you all for joining this evening. So Parshas Ha'azinu. Also please remember to press mute. If that's okay, let me just mute everyone. I think everyone is on mute. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Parshas Ha'azinu. I think the first and most important thing to understand about Parshas Ha'azinu is the significance and the eternal significance of this Shira. It's effectively Moshe Rabbeinu's last declaration to the people, except of course the brachas, the blessings that he gives in the next week's parsha, in the last parsha, in Zos HaBracha. But we understand how fundamental Shiras Ha'azinu is from an unusual source. There's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, that describes the Shira that was sung in the Beis Hamikdash. And the Gemara says, "B'musfei de Shabsa, ma hayu omrim." What did they say? What song, what Shira did they sing on Musaf on Shabbos? Amar Rav Anan bar Rava Amar Rav. So Rav Anan bar Rava said in the name of Rav, Haziv Loch, that the Shira they sang on Shabbos is Haziv Loch. That's an abbreviation for each parsha in Ha'azinu. We divide Ha'azinu into 6 different parshas. That means the song. The last parsha Shvi is after the song, but Ha'azinu itself is divided. The song is divided into 6 parshas, and those 6 are fixed. It's one of the reasons why you're not supposed to divide up Ha'azinu anymore. You don't add. You can't really add. There isn't really space to add during the song of Ha'azinu itself. So every single Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash during the Musaf, or they're bringing the Musaf, the Korban Musaf, the Leviim are singing Shiras Ha'azinu. So Shiras Ha'azinu, although it presents itself as a message to Bnei Yisrael before they enter Eretz Yisrael, it is clear that it has eternal and fundamental messages, and it was meant to be a message. It was meant to be a message that would last forever. We know that Chazal also interpret Ha'azinu on multiple levels, so that it is both explained as there's Rashi brings effectively both pathways in the song of Ha'azinu, both in terms of the directed at the Bnei Yisrael themselves, and also directed towards the nations of the world, so that it is able to fulfill a dual function. But how to get to the essence of Ha'azinu, what Ha'azinu is meant to achieve? We know that it contains a grand sweep of history. It talks about the past, it talks about the present, it talks about the future. There's one pasuk that we can perhaps identify as containing the key to understanding Ha'azinu. It is the pasuk that appears, the pasuk Dalet, a pasuk which we are very, very familiar with, usually from very difficult circumstances. Hatzur tomim pa'aloi ki chol derachov mishpat. The rock, whose work is perfect, all his ways are justice. Kel emunah, a faithful God. Ve'ein ovel, there is nothing wrong, no sin. Tzadik v'yosharhu, he is righteous and upright. Tzadik v'yoshar. Now, this pasuk is, of course, the final statement of eternal belief. It is the essence, the beginning of what we call tzedek hadin, me'aleinu ad levaya. This is the acceptance of judgment. Hatzur tomim pa'aloi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways, Hashem's ways are perfect. And the point here, the emphasis here, clearly is defined, and the way to understand this pasuk is defined by the very first word, Hatzur. The word tzur, as a reference to Hashem, is very unusual in the Torah. It only occurs, the word itself only occurs 3 times until this point in the Torah. So it occurs in other contexts in the Torah until this point, but only 3 times. And the word as used, the name as used as the name of Hashem, occurs 5 times in Ha'azinu alone. So there must be something about this word tzur which is essential to understanding the Shir of Ha'azinu. If there's a shift, from using the normal names of Hashem, whether it's what we call the Shem Ha'etzem, the actual name of Hashem, or the names that are used as descriptive of Hashem's attributes. If there's a shift from there to the use of a different name, the use of the name Tzur, rock, right? That must be fundamental to understanding the Shira itself. And the question is, what is that understanding that this name of Hashem presents itself, presents us with? What is that? So of course, we understand that the obvious understanding of the word Tzur is that it refers to Hashem in terms of the fact that he is unchanging, the permanence. That's the notion of a Tzur. A rock is it defines permanence. That's what a rock is. But Rabbeinu Bachai has two pshatim here, two explanations of the word Tzur, at least two explanations. And the two which I like to focus on, they fit together so powerfully and present us with such a much deeper understanding of what the use of the word Tzur is. In one of his explanations, he says as follows. He says, why does Moshe Rabbeinu shift to this name here? He says that we find elsewhere in the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu tried to reference the use of a particular word in order to, if you like, make up for what he perceived to be an area that he had erred himself. So famously, the example he gives is when Moshe Rabbeinu, he comes and he says and after the crossing of the Yam Suf, the Shir HaSayam, he says the words Oz Yosher Moshe. That's the beginning of the Shir, Oz Yosher Moshe. The Oz connects to the words Oz me Oz Bossi El Paro. At the end of Parshas Shmos, when he said, so Chazal understand, that when he said, ever since I came to Paro, it's got even worse for them. So he was, so to speak, Choto Ba'oz. He used the word Oz incorrectly and therefore corrected it with the word Oz in the Shira, as if to say, this word will now be elevated and used for a lofty and correct purpose. Says Rabbeinu Bachai in a beautiful insight. He says the same thing is happening here. This name of Hashem evokes the most painful memories for Moshe Rabbeinu. V'hikisov Hatzur, right? He hits the rock. He hits the rock. That is the reason emphasized again and again in the Torah. The end of this parsha, we'll come to it hopefully if we have time later on. The end of this parsha once again, because you sinned by Mei Meriva, therefore you will not enter the land. So many times emphasized again and again and again and again. We know that one of the reasons why the Torah emphasizes it again and again is in order to show that the reason why he wasn't entering that was not because of the Chet of the Meraglim, as Chazal explained. That's why every time it has to be emphasized to show that it wasn't because of the spies, what had happened there. It was because of a specific judgment to him. But this name is the most painful name, the most painful word for Moshe Rabbeinu to use. And yet he uses it because it demonstrates the ultimate justice of Hashem. It is in the context of saying Hatsura Tomim Polo, the power of those words, the rock, his work is perfect, is emphasized so much more when you understand that Moshe Rabbeinu is using that very word which spelled for him the reason why he couldn't enter Eretz Yisrael. So of course, we see from here the greatness of Moshe. He's able to praise Hashem in the very area that he was nichshel in, the very area that he stumbled in. That is the first explanation that I'm bringing here from Rabbeinu Bachai. It epitomizes the ultimate justice of Hashem. But there's another pshat as well. He says that the name Sur represents something else as well. He says that when Moshe Rabbeinu uses the word Hatsur Tomim Paloi, he also references the creation of mankind. There's a famous Gemara in Brachos, Daf Yud. The Gemara in Brachos, Daf Yud goes through the words used by Chana in her beautiful Shira when she's granted a child. And it says, and the words used, the Gemara says like this. So there's certain of the Amoraim in front of other of the Masadar Agadato Kamid of Bishur ben Levi. They organize the Agadato in front of Bishur ben Levi. Omele says in Maidich Siv. What does it mean when it says in the Pasuk Baruchi Nafshi Es Hashem, my soul praise Hashem, Hashem v'chol kravai Hashem kodshay, all my innards His holy name. Omele said to him, Boyer Eishelo Kamidas Hakadosh Baruch Hu Midas Bosav Adom. The Hashem doesn't work as human beings work. Midas Bosav Adom. The way human beings work is they draw an image on a wall. They can't put any spirit or neshama inside that image. Anything real. What does Hashem do? He is tzura b'soich tzura. He forms a human being inside another human being. and he puts inside it ruach, or neshama, a spirit, and a neshama, craving, and everything that it needs to live. V'hainu da'omra Chana, and that is what Chana meant when she says, Ein kodosh kashem ki ein biltecha, there is none like you, ve'ein sur kelokeinu, there is no rock like our God. So she also uses the name Tsur, the rock. My Ein Tsur Kelokeinu, says the Gemara, Ein Sayor Kelokeinu. There is no artist as great as our God, no one able to form things in the most perfect manner as Hashem can. And that, says Rabbeinu Bachai, was Moshe Rabbeinu's, another way of understanding Moshe Rabbeinu's reference here to the use of the word Tsur and why he uses the word Tsur. Because this, the formation of man, he references the formation of man, because effectively he was saying that because of the Chet of Adam HaRishon, because of what Adam HaRishon had done wrong, that was why we know Misa, death was decreed on his descendants. And therefore, on the day of Moshe Rabbeinu's own passing, he's again using this word Tsur to emphasize Hashem's perfect artistry, in the sense that man is created perfect. And the only thing that will cause man to go wrong is mankind's actions themselves. That's what it means. The artist is perfect. The work of the artist is perfect. The problem lies with the way we use the gifts. The way these two explanations can fit together so beautifully is that on the one hand, we have the emphasis on the strict justice. And on the other hand, we have the notion of how man is created in a perfect manner and the ability on what we can achieve if we want to. So perhaps, and that links, by the way, to a very beautiful piyut that we sing on Yom Kippur. V'alviso tehillah. That's the most one of the beautiful piyutim in Shachar. So V'alviso tehillah, that we say that Hashem created all malachim, yeah, which are completely perfect in every way. There's nothing wrong with them. V'alviso tehillah. But you want the praise of this flesh and blood that messes things up all the time, that always gets things wrong. But that's what you want. You don't want the praise of the malachim. You want the praise of us. So the two pshatim fit together in the sense that there's the eternal strict justice of Hashem. There's acknowledging that, but there's also acknowledging the ability that we have. In the word Sur is both the fact that Hashem is the only thing that's permanent, the only being that's permanent in the world, whilst also an acknowledgement of the fact that we can uplift ourselves, we can raise ourselves. That's what we have, that's what we can achieve in life. It's the famous idea that a person should always carry around with themselves two pieces of paper, one in each pocket. One of the Hasidic Rebbes used to say this. You know this idea. They used to say, in one pocket should say, in one place it should say, I'm dust and ashes, and the other one should say, that everything was created for my sake. You need both sides, and I think that's how, if you like, the two pshatim of Rabbeinu Bachai beautifully fit together here in the explanation of the word Sur. Staying on the same pasuk, the end of the pasuk says, that Hashem, we describe Hashem as tzaddik v'yosher. And the question is, a tzaddik and a yosher. What is the difference between tzaddik and yosher? Tzaddik means righteous, but what does yosher mean? And for this, I think that probably the best place to turn to is the introduction of the Netziv to Sefer Bereshis. Netziv brings the Gemara in Avodah Zarah that Bereshis is called the Sefer HaYosher, the book of the upright, Sefer HaYosher. And it's a Rabbi Yochanan. It's a statement of Rabbi Yochanan in Avodah Zarah, and it's based on a pasuk in Yehoshua and also in the book of Shmuel, the Sefer Shmuel, which also talks about, in both cases, about the Sefer HaYosher. That's Sefer Bereshis. Why is it called Sefer HaYosher? Because it's a reference to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who are called Yesharim, as Bilam says, Thomas Nafshi Mos Yesharim. May I perish like the Yesharim, the upright ones. That's what the Gemara says. And then Netziv's question is, why is it that Bereshis is called Sefer HaYosher? What is it about Bereshis that makes it the book of the upright, and that the Avos were worthy and achieved this title? And he refers you to this pasuk, the pasuk of Hatzor Tomipo. It's in his introduction, to the whole Netziv, the beginning of Parshas Bereshis. The Torah says, Hatzor Tomipo Tzadik v'Yosharhu. He says the Shevach Yosharhu ne'emal hatzdik din HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chorban bayis sheni shahayadara kesha v'sal toil. the praise of Yosha, of being upright, was specifically said in a prophetic manner about the Churban Bayis Sheni, the destruction of Bayis Sheni, when it was a twisted and corrupt generation. He says, we explain this to mean as follows. Shoid tzadikim v'chasidim v'amelei Torah. We know this, that at the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, they were tzadikim, and they were righteous, they were chasidim, they were pious, and they also toiled in Torah. They were great Talmidei Chachomim. Ach, lo hayu yesharim b'halichos olamim. But they were not yosher in the correct way to behave in the world, because halichos olamim. And that's why he says, because they didn't act in a, what we might call a menschlich way, a yosher way. It's remarkable words. He says, the sinas chinam in their hearts led them to suspect anyone who wasn't quite like them, right, as if he was an apikoros. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. He threw the eyes and apikoros. Yeah, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know what he's doing, because that came from a lack of yashrus. A person who is yasher would never do that, and therefore he says they came through that to shvichas dam, to bloodshed, or everything else terrible and world, until eventually the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. And he says that's the tziduk hadin. That is the acceptance of judgment referred to in the pasuk. Shakodesh Baruch Hu Yosharhu. Hashem is the ultimate upright one, the Yosher. Ve'eno sovel tzadikim ka'elu. He will not bear righteous, in inverted commas, people like this, ela ba'ofen sheholchim b'derech ha'yosher, unless they they behave in an upright manner. Gam b'halichos olam v'lo ba'akminus. And don't look for, the twisted, well, that's all right, no one will see. Yeah, you're righteous outside, but not Yosher. There's a difference in tzaddik and Yosher. Avagav shu l'shem shamayim. Even if they think they're doing it in l'shem shamayim, because he says that causes the churban habriya, that causes the destruction of the whole of creation and the destruction of civilization itself. And he says that was the reason, the praise of the Avos, because apart from being tzaddikim and chasidim, they were also Yesharim. How do you see they were Yesharim? Because every interaction they have with the nations of the world, the people with the Canaan areas, it's all done in an upright way, in a way that is not designed to deceive them, to outwit them. You see that again. You see that again and again and again. You see it with Avram, the way Avram Avinu behaves. You see it in the very fact that the Torah has to emphasize that Yaakov has to deal with Lavan in a way that Lavan deals with him. You see Yaakov's deep concern about the way his sons deal with the town of Shechem. There are many examples we can give about the way they behaved. They conducted themselves in the right way as far as possible. They acted, he said, with love towards them, and they tried to do what was good for them, because that was the way that creation itself would survive. And he says that is why Birnbaum says, Thomas Nafshi Mos Yesharim. May I die, he says, like the death of the Yesharim. Why does he of all people call them Yesharim? Says the Netziv, because Birnbaum couldn't put himself in the framework of a tzaddik. He knew that. He knew he wasn't on that level. He may have had nevuah, but he was never going to come close to the notion of someone who's a tzaddik, who does all the mitzvahs properly and learns Torah. That was nowhere, he wasn't anywhere near that level. The one thing he wanted to ask for when he was in the framework of the words being put in his mouth in the right way, right, of course, through the nevuah, was at least Thomas Nafshi Mos Yesharim. That I can try, that's something I can live up to. I may not be able to live up to the tzaddik element, but at least let me be a yosher. Let me live life in a straight manner. A person who can live life as a yosher has achieved a tremendous thing. And that's the reference here to the tzaddik v'yosher, understood as the Netziv does. Moving on to paragraph based Parsha Shiur, there is, the Torah says, when in describing Yimtso'ehu be'eretz midbar, you will find him in the desert. Yimtso'ehu be'eretz midbar of a sohu yelel yishimayim. So this is a description of the Moshe Rabbeinu's Chaim Mos Olam. Remember the generations that have gone past, that have been in the past, and he describes the love that Hashem had for the Jewish people in the desert. And he says that he found them in the desert, in a wasteland. Yisovevenu, he surrounded them. Yuvoinenehu. Yuvoinenehu means he gave them understanding, right? That's what, as in bina, understanding. And then Yitzrenu ki ishain eno, ki ishain eno, and protected them like the pupil of his eye. So what are these two words, Yisovevenu and Yivoinenehu? So there's in Sefer Ali Shur, Rav Wolbe, in Chelik Beis, on the Tov Mem Vov, has a whole piece on this posuk, which he links, and he uses this posuk to explain the essence of Sukkot. It's also good for Yonei Diyoma as well. He says like this. He says that, he brings a Gemara in Menachos. The Gemara in Menachos says as follows. It says, Tonu Rabbanon, Chavivin Yisrael, cherished of the Jewish people, Shesilavon HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'mitzvahs tefillin b'roshein. Hashem surrounded them with the mitzvahs of tefillin, with mitzvahs tefillin b'roshein, tefillin on their head, or tefillin b'zeresein, tefillin on their arms, tzitzis b'vigdeihen, sits on their garments, and mezuzah b'pischeihen, va'aleihen omadovet sheva b'yom hilal tich. Brings that Gemara. The idea that mitzvahs surround us. The mitzvahs are the one, surround us completely. Says Rav Wolbe that the reference to Yisovevenu is that we are surrounded by mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are designed to elevate the external trappings of life. And it is that builds the pnim, it builds the internal. So the Yisovevenu is everything that surrounds us that we achieve through the Maaseh HaMitzvahs, the actions that we do, the active, basic elevation of the way we live, the actions that we do around us. And it is only through that we can build the internal. He uses the phrase kishiyesh misoviv yesh pnim. When there is something around, when you're surrounded by the right elements in life, then you can build the internal elements. Then you can develop the Yevonenehu, which comes through Torah. It's the Torah itself. So, and that also fits with Rashi, because Rashi says that he surrounded them with the anonim, with the cloud itself, the external setup in the midbar. Yevonenehu b'Torah ubina, with Torah and understanding. And the point here is there was only one place where this could be achieved, and that was in the desert. And that's why it says, the beginning of the Pasuk says, Yimsoehu be'eretz midbar. It was in the desert that this could be achieved. Why? Because only when a person is able to take themselves out from their natural comforts, the natural habitat, they can be in a place like a desert effectively, can they be built up in a positive way by the values of the Torah itself. And he says that is why this Pasuk is really the best way of understanding, or is a perfect way to understand the essence of Sukkot, because that's exactly what we do. Same with Diras Keva, we go outside. It's the same thing. It's the same model, going outside from the Diras Keva, from the fixed Diran to the Diras Arai, to the temporary dwelling. And what do we do? What are we doing in the Sukkah? It's the same thing. Yisovevenu, we're being surrounded as they were, of course, because of the, that's the whole thing, the anonim. That's why we have the Sukkah, right? Because of the clouds, the anonim, exactly as they lived in the midbar. We have the same thing, that the Sukkah surrounds us and elevates us in that way. It's the mitzvah which surrounds us, and then we can appreciate the internal lessons, the lessons of Yevonenehu. That's how he explains the mitzvah of Sukkah, which you learn from this pasuk. Finally, I'd just like to refer you to Rashi at the end of the parasha, after the Shiur, Lamed Beis Pasuk Mem Ches. Rashi says, very, very beautiful Rashi. Every Rashi is beautiful, you'll tell me, but this is also Rashi says like this: Vayedaber Hashem. The pasuk says, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe. Hashem spoke to Moshe be'etzem hayom hazeh, in this very day. Lemor, saying, what is the significance of be'etzem hayom hazeh? He's about to introduce alei el har ha'avorim. Now he's going to have to go up to Har Avorim. He's going to see Rishon, or he's going to see the land, and you won't be able to enter. What is the significance of the words be'etzem hayom hazeh in this very day? And Rashi says there are 3 times in the Torah. Where the word be'etzem hayom hazeh is used in this very day, and all 3 of them point in the same direction. You find with Noach, he enters the Teva be'etzem hayom hazeh, in this very day. You find with Yitzias Mitzrayim, they leave Mitzrayim, and it's also be'etzem hayom hazeh, Yotzu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, and then on this occasion. All 3 times, it is to emphasize, Rashi says, the ultimate justice and the perfect justice of Hashem. So with Noach, all of the people are standing there around the Teva and saying, we're not going to let you in. It's not going to happen. We're going to. They threaten to destroy the Teva, and Hashem says, I'll do it in such a way that will prove you completely wrong. You won't be able to do anything. There's no way you'll be able to do anything, and I'll bring him in the table in the middle of the day, and you won't be able to affect the plans at all. Similarly with Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Egyptians say, well, we'll stop them going. When they're going to go, we'll stop them going. And Hashem says, I'll take them out in the middle of the day. You won't be able to do a thing. But the interesting one, really, the message is this one. It says Rashi, what is going on here? It says like this. Yisrael, you would say, the Jewish people said like this, if we sense that he's about to depart this world, we just won't let him. The person who took us out from Egypt, he split the sea, he brought down the mon, he gave us the slav, the well, he gave us the Torah. We're not going to let him. I will bring him to his resting place in the middle of the day. There's nothing you can do about it. What is the difference, though? There is a difference, I think, between all these three occasions. You see, in the first two, the people who complain and the people who are trying to stop the plan of Hashem foolishly, they're left on the outside, right? They don't, with Noach, they all perish, right? And the Egyptians also perish, right? In the Yam Suf. So both of them are proven wrong, but then they're left out of the picture. This one is different. This one, they learn the lesson. This is, we could say, perhaps just suggesting that this was the culmination itself of Moshe Rabbeinu's life's work. It was the fulfillment to show as his last message to the people that it wasn't about him. That everything he did, they were emphasizing, look what this man did for us. He did all these things. How can we let him go? He is the reason we're here. He says, no, the last lesson I'm going to teach you is that it's nothing to do with me. It's all about Hashem. That is Moshe Rabbeinu's legacy. The power and beauty of Moshe Rabbeinu's legacy is that the final message he leaves them with was that he did none of it. It was nothing. Like we're saying the Haggadah, when Moshe Rabbeinu is appearing in the Haggadah, it was nothing to do with me. And Hashem brings him in Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, like the other two occasions. But on this occasion, they learn the message. On this occasion, they're on the inside. They're not left outside the teva. They learn the message and they absorb that message. That it is not about. It was entirely about Hashem, and it wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu. He's able to cope with that most painful of judgments that's passed down to him, that he won't enter Eretz Yisrael. But at the same time, he uses that very moment of pain to teach the greatest message of all. That ultimately, everything in life goes back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for listening. For those who are joining us on Zoom, we're going to carry on in just a moment with the idea of some divrei chizuk for Yom Kippur and other ideas for the Kehillah. I'm just going to put this on mute for a moment because I'm going to move to a different location. So don't go away. We'll be back.